Well, they fought me every step of the way, but I finally managed to get the bank of carburetors out. It was quite the process to fill them out of that bike. They were very much so in there and very much so didn't want to come out. They're definitely in need of a good clean. All of the slides are stuck, as well as the throttle body is stuck. The actual throttle itself, the throttle plates, I can't get any of them to open. So be a process of going through them and taking them apart, blowing them out. First thing I'm going to do is get my compressor out and blow all the crud around it off of them so that doesn't fall back inside while I'm cleaning them. So I'm now going to proceed to disassemble the carbs completely. So every single screw is going to come out, all the slides are going to come out. I'm going to take the float bowls all off, along with the all the jets, the needles. Basically, when you're cleaning out carbs, what you have to do is take every single piece out. They're not complicated, they're not hard, you just take every single bit out. So you take all the bits out and blow air through all the passages and free up every piece so they all move properly, and you should be good. So let's start the process here. So before I started this, I also just went over there and pulled all the spark plugs out of the bike, and I sprayed some penetrating fluid and some 2-stroke motor oil, because that's what I had, down all the cylinders just to let it soak. Like I said, the bike has been sitting for a while, so it's probably a good idea just to lube the top end and let it soak a little bit, loosen any corrosion that's in there up. There shouldn't be much, because all the spark plugs were in there, although one plug was very, very tight and did not want to come out, and that one did show a little bit of rust on the bottom of it. I doubt there's much in the way in the bores. 4 strokes you can let them sit for a long time and they'll probably be just fine. They're pretty resilient that way. It's not like 2 strokes where one cylinder is always open to the atmosphere, and if you let them sit for too long they will rust inside. So I should also note these are what are called CV carbs, or constant velocity carburetors. They came around in the late 80s way to both smooth out throttle response as well as reduce emissions. Basically the way that they work is, unlike slide carbs where the throttle directly operates the slide up and down and opens the throttle up, these have a set of butterfly valves in the front. You can see in each one, these ones are stuck shut at the moment, and your throttle operates these, and as the throttle valve opens the vacuum increases and it sucks each of these slides upward, which allows more air into the engine. Okay. So, you're going to find, this is a lot of time in carbs and older motorcycles, you're going to find small screws that will not come out, like this one here. Now, do not keep trying and do not strip the screw out. You're better off to get a small pair of vice grips, lock them onto the outside of the screw, and loosen it off that way. That way you don't destroy the screw head, and once it's loose you can take it out and you can reuse the screw afterwards. There we go. Now we're going to pop all these slides up from the back of the carburetor. So it's tight. So that's 3. So as you can see, this is how they work. They have a diaphragm on the top to seal it, and it raises and lowers your needle, let more or less fuel into the carburetor. As you can also see here, it's got a band of varnished up gasoline that's quite sticky. That's what was probably keeping them from sliding. So I'm going to clean them all up, polish them, clean the needles off, and they should be good as new. Very seldom rebuilding carburetors do I actually put new parts in them. More often than not, unless there's a hole in one of the diaphragms or you absolutely destroy a gasket, you don't need to get a carb rebuild kit or new parts. You can always clean out jets and other bits. This one's not wanting to come out. It's actually pulling the seat out with it. So I'm going to spray a little bit of penetrating fluid in there. Just to hopefully loosen it up a little bit. Because it is moving, just work it back and forth a bit. So I'm prying it up and then I'm pushing it back down in its range of movement just to let the penetrating fluid get in there. Here it comes. Yeah, it's absolutely covered in varnish from sitting. There it is. So you can see this one's covered in varnished gas along the sides. The needle's coated. That's what it was sticking on the way up. So these, like I said earlier, there was no way this bike would ever run with these carbs the way they were. It would have been a waste of time to try. Wouldn't have come up with any meaningful result. So, now as you can see, the tops, the CV slides are all out. So in here, you have a series of air jets in the top. You can see right here. Yeah, there you go. 2 air jets. They're all flathead. Make sure you have one the right size. You don't want to strip these little boys out, otherwise you're in for a world of misery trying to get them out afterwards. So you're going to pop all those out. Note which ones stay in which hole. They have a little number embossed on them, and you don't want to get them backwards. Otherwise, it won't run. Take those out afterwards once we have the floats off the bottoms. So, now I'm leaving all these carburetors attached to each other because the throttle linkage on these is somewhat complex and somewhat complicated, and I don't want to mess around with that too much. I'm just going to soak all the linkages here with a good penetrating oil and leave them together. They're not going to get in the way of me taking anything else apart or getting the float bolt off. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to soak these so that they're loosening up while I'm working. Also spraying a little bit around the plates themselves. Won't help loosen them up at all. Alright, so next thing is next. The float bolts. That one was loose already. It's very important when you're taking carburetors apart that you have the right size screwdrivers. Don't try and make the wrong size one fit. Just end up stripping out the screw, and like I said before, delicate assemblies like carburetors, it's a nightmare to get them out, and more often than not you'll either be stuck trying to find a new carburetor body for your bike, which depending on the rarity and age of it could be quite the task, or you'll have to find some way or take it into a machine shop and have them drill it out and remove it, which means you'll be out more money. So it's just better to take your time and do it right the first time. It's also my preference, if you're going to leave a bike sitting for any period of time or you don't ride it regularly, that you should use premium fuel, top grade, in your bike, even if it doesn't call for it, since it has little or in most cases no ethanol in it. And the ethanol is what gums up and attacks all your gaskets, seals, diaphragms, etc. in the fuel. It likes to dissolve rubber. So if you stick to the premium fuel, which realistically is maybe $1, if that, more a tank, you should have fewer problems. Missed one. So you pop all the covers off. They're usually stuck a little bit. Whack. Yeah, these were definitely stored without draining the carbs. This one in particular, you can see it's full of this lovely golden, very sticky varnish. That all needs to be cleaned out. So I don't have any carb cleaner on me at the moment. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to fill each of these, or probably just one of them here, this ugly one, with a solvent. In this case I'm going to use a wax and grease remover. Or a brake clean. Carb cleaner would be preferable, but like I said, don't have any at the moment on me. I'm going to fill this up, and each piece that I take out is going to be placed in here to soak while I'm working and dissolve any varnish or anything that's on it. Of course, taking note that each piece you take out, which hole it came out of. Most of these will be the same. For example, well, they should all be the same. If they're not, somebody's been into your carburetors and you should look into it. But each of these smaller idle circuits on the top, these smaller jets, they should all be the same. Versus these ones, the bigger ones here, these are called your main jets. These should also all be the same. Yeah, see, we've got a stuck float here. It's all gummed up and stuck in place. They should move freely like these three do. And you can also see that this one's all green and cruddy, sticky. That's no good at all. So, the breakdown continues. So now I'm going to proceed to take each little piece out, like I said, and place it into that float bowl to soak for a while. Again, making sure that we're going to use the correct size screwdriver. In this case, this one's not. Find the smaller one. So, now with the right size screwdriver, we'll continue to remove all of the jets. So I'm going to take this moment, now that I've taken two jets out, to write down some notes for myself, which size is which, since they probably will fit into the wrong holes. The mains on these carburetors, which like I said before is I believe an 82 Seca 750. It's got 120 mains and 43 idles. And that's just a good thing to keep track of. Sometimes it'll be obvious on some bikes. It'll clearly be so different that you can't mess it up. And like I said, the larger number is always going to be your main jet, so you could do it that way too. Even this screwdriver is ever so slightly the wrong size. But I'm going to use my trick before, like I said, and use a pair of vice grips to pop this one out so I don't do any damage to it. There we go. Now it's loose. Use a screwdriver to pop it out. I usually soak all the parts, even the little washers that are under the main jets. May as well clean them all up. I'm not even going to try and use a screwdriver on these ones on the end here because they're so sticky and nasty that there's not going to be much point. I'm going to skip right to the vice grips for getting them out. It's a good call because this one is quite stuck. There we go. Even the washer's glued down with the varnish from the old gas. See how crusty and green it is. Next up, we're going to take all of the slides out. Sorry, not the slides, the floats. These are all held in by a single pin. Use this one as an example. You can see right here is the hinge point the float moves on. It actuates a small needle valve underneath, which we'll take out in a moment, and that allows fuel into the float bowl out of the fuel tank. So first starting off, we have to take this pin out. Now, sometimes it's loose, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you have to get a screwdriver in here and punch it out from the side. In this case, it looks like this one's going to be nice and loose, so we're just going to get a pair of needleless pliers in here and pull the pin out. And there you have the pin. So we're going to drop that into our cleaning fluid too to take whatever varnish is on it off. So comes the float. I'm not going to drop the float into our solvent because I don't want it to damage the plastic floats that are on it. If there's anything on here, I might just brush it off by hand. So these are your needle valves. These control the flow into the tank. You want to inspect them, make sure they're not grooved, worn, broken in any way. Those we're going to drop into the solvent as well. Oh, these ones I might actually not. These have a neoprene seat on them, and they're not varnished up. So these I'm going to leave to the side and not risk eating through the seat on them. If they were all metal, as some are, then I'd probably wash them. So these we're not going to wash. Then we proceed to remove the rest of the pins. And the needles. Which brings us down to the stuck one. That no doubt will be a bit of a pain. Actually, that pin came out surprisingly easy. I stand corrected. There's why. So the floats come off, but the needle valve is actually stuck within its seat quite firmly. So, twist it a little bit, pop it up out of there. There it is. That one is quite grungy. That one I'm going to polish and wash. I'm not going to let it soak because I don't want to eat through the seat, but I am definitely going to wash it with some salt, a bit of solvent for a short period of time. Which brings us to the next part we're going to remove. In this case, you can see it right here. These pieces where the needle valves went into, these are called the needle seats. These have a hex head on them, and I'm going to remove them in this case with a socket, so as not to risk damaging them. I'm going to guess that they're probably a 10 mil, which they are. I'm going to get a small socket on there, and we're going to remove all of the seats. Break them all loose. They are quite snug in there, quite stubborn from sitting all of this time. This one's stuck for a little more. Oops. There we go. Now all of those come out, and they too. These ones actually have little fuel screens on them that should be cleaned out. These two are going to be dropped into the fluid to let soak for a while. These also have apparently copper crush wires underneath them. May as well clean those too. Clean parts just make for easier reassembly, and when you're troubleshooting later if the bike's not running, it's one less thing that you know it can't be. Next up, I'm going to remove those top air jets that I pointed out before. Noting in this case I'm going to use the holes in here as markers. So I have an empty hole on the top side right here. And so I'm going to say the nearest one to that, in this case if I read the jet here, is an 80, The one below it is a 195, and I'm going to write that down so that I don't forget. And then those will be removed as well. It's very important when cleaning carburetors that you remove and open up every single passage. There's one clogged passage on carburetor and it will not run, or it won't run correctly. You'll be adjusting things, fiddling around, wondering why you have a stutter at a certain RPM that won't go away. When you have a carbureted engine, you always clean the carburetor out completely. They're very basic systems, and like I'm showing you here, anybody with a screwdriver, paper and pencil can take one apart and clean it. It's not a complicated process. I should note here too, another method of cleaning all these little pieces is you can buy very cheaply now ultrasonic cleaners from places like Harbor Freight, or in Canada you can go to Princess Auto or any other discount store, and you can buy ultrasonic parts cleaner, and or in this case it would be ultrasonic carb cleaner or whatever fluid you like to put in there. Drop all your parts in it, leave them sitting there for a few hours, and they'll come out like a shiny new penny, all nice and clean. So next up, we're going to remove the needle seats. In this case, the main needle seats. So if you look down inside each carburetor bore, you see there's a brass ring. These also contain these are what's called the emulsion tubes. These are hammered out from the underside of where the main jets were. You can see here where the main jet was. You can see the brass ring to the other side. So you need to put something on top of that and tap it out. Well, be careful when tapping them out. You don't know you damage the threads or anything else around them. So you're going to find yourself a tool of some kind that you think won't do any damage. In this case, I think I'm going to use a flat-bladed screwdriver that spans the width of the entire piece so as not to put any pressure onto the threads themselves. And I'm using a rubber mallet here. We'll see if this works. Light taps, and that's 1, 2, 3. Of course, this one here being the sticky one. 4. Well, they've all dropped out. They don't always come out that nicely. Sometimes it takes a little more tapping. So these are your emulsion tubes. As you can see, pretty basic. You can see a row of very, very small holes on each side. These all need to be clear. If they're plugged up and after soaking them they don't come clear, even with compressed air, what works very well is you get a piece of very fine wire, like a wire brush, very carefully poke it through each hole and clean them all out. So I'm going to drop these into our little thing of part cleaner as well. Them soak, take the varnish off them. Even though they're clean, like I said, clean parts makes for easier reassembly, and as well as being more pleasant to work on later on. So the next thing we're going to do here, we've got all those free. You see all these empty holes, very nice. So I'm going to try and free up these throttle plates, see if they're ready to break loose and open and close. And they're getting there. They're still very stiff. They are opening and closing. So we're going to give them a little bit of help here. Open, close. Just work them back and forth. Loosen up from sitting over time. And once they're in fully open position, squirt a little more penetrating oil onto the shafts that you can now expose on the inside. And again, we're going to continue working them back and forth until they are loose enough they open all the way easily and will snap back closed on their own. As you're doing this, I can already feel them loosening up. A little more in there. And continue working. And they're starting to get there. They're now actually opening. So it's closing very slowly on their own, but they should absolutely snap shut immediately. Don't install a bike with sticky throttle valves. That's a safety hazard. As soon as you let go of the throttle, you want it to drop down. There they go. Now we're getting there. There we go. Snap shut. Which they're now doing. There we go. See? That's how it should be. You should open them and they should immediately snap shut as soon as you let go. So in the case of the one side here, I can see underneath the throttle, sorry, the butterfly valve, when it was open, there's a little ring of build up underneath it there. So I'm going to open it up and I'm just going to rag go in there and wipe it out. As you can see, cleaning carburetors is not a particularly complicated job. It just takes some time and some patience to actually go in and do the job properly the first time. Because quick job here, you don't take everything out, you don't blow all the passages out, and you're just wasting your time. You won't get satisfactory results, you just end up opening them again, which, depending on your bike, I mean in this case these were quite the bear to get out. It's going to be even more miserable to put them back in, I have no doubt. A little varnish on this one that I'm going to work here and polish off so that there's nothing that it can stick open with her later on. Yeah, so I'm just going to continue cleaning these up. That's complete disassembly. It's as far as I'm going to take it. So it's just a matter of putting it back together in reverse according to your notes. Cleaning out all the jets, the needles, reassembling them all, and then putting it back in your bike. So I think I'm going to call that end of part 1 here of this project. And I'll see you back in part 2 with the carbs hopefully cleaned and mounted back into the bike. One thing I forgot to mention is now that everything's out of the carbs and all the jets are soaking, what you want to do is you want to get some compressed air from a compressor. Those little canned air things, dusters you get from the department stores. Not enough pressure, won't do the job. You gotta have a compressor with a compressed air, somewhere around 90 or 100 psi, and you're gonna take it and you're gonna blow through every single opening, passage, and hole on each carburetor body. Every single one. It's very important. Make sure air moves through each one. If it doesn't, stop. Chase it with a wire. Look at the carbs. Figure out why there's no air moving through them. And do the same thing with all of your little emulsion tubes and jets. Once you take them out of your solvent, take them out, dry them, blow through them all. Make sure you can see light through each single hole and opening on them. Because if you can't see light through them, fuel is not going to flow through them, your bike's not going to run. Another side note on the, I'm thinking about it, on the opening of the carb faces here, you can also see that there's an air screw on each side of each opening. Also take these out and blow through them and clean them.